All right, good afternoon, folks. Good evening. Warp 103 bringing you guys another one. This time here, I'm going to talk about a video that Chems made about weak spot ruins heavies. So sit back, relax, and of course, enjoy the show.
I'm gonna have to rain down a godly firestorm on you.
And thank you for viewing this video. If you like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the icon above, and then of course hitting the bell icon to get notifications when the next video drops. So here we go. Okay, now Chems, I'm gonna tell you straight up, is a way better player than I am. And even though he's a way better player than I am, he's a super unicorn and everything else. This is where the community has a schism, has a split, and how things are so messed up in the game that Wargaming really doesn't know who they should be listening to. Okay, now he's saying weak spots ruin the game, and I'm of the opinion that it's really the opposite of what it is. When they removed weak spots from the heavy tanks, that is what ruined the game. Okay, now he's going to be showing you tanks like the VK 100-01P, and basically his preface is it is at high tier. When it faces tier 10s, as you can see here, it basically gets pinned by everything. When it's facing tier 8s, it's competitive, but when it's facing tier 6s, it's overpowered. So basically what he referred to it, he's being the matchmaker for the issue where it isn't the matchmaker. How can I say that this easily? Because again, from his premise, you already made a mistake. The VK 101P is already a problem in and of itself, because even when this tank first came out, people in the community said that this is a big problem because it is missing weak spots. All right, now I'm going to show you a tank that's literally designed exactly the same way, but essentially this is the exact same tank, essentially. Notice this is facing an ARL, tier 6. Notice that it has a driver weak spot that this doesn't have. So even if I angled it completely and everything else of that, any tier 6, if the weak spot is in the hole like this, it's a small weak spot, you can literally hit this and pin it. Now, of course, if you are able to hide the weak spot and everything else, so that of course it's going to be able to not get pinned, and it still will be able to angle and deflect effectively. +2, -2 is an issue, but the removal of the weak spots is more of an issue than the +2, -2 is. Because again, if this same tank here had the weak spot right here, guess what would be able to happen? Tier 6s would be able to pin it. Again, if the effective armor at the top for this right here was the same, it would be able to get pinned here too. Again, if you removed all weak spots, now this is one of the reasons why the Marl Brick is one of the hatest tanks in the game. Nobody wants to buy it and everything else, because it has what? Weak spots. Now, what would happen if you added more weak spots to all of the heavy tanks inside of the game? Now, imagine if this was, oh, I don't know, with a BZ. Meaning that if it didn't change anything else about the BZ, but gave it a weak spot here and gave it a section on the turret that can be pinned as a weak spot, do you think it still would be overpowered versus tier 6s? No, it wouldn't be. This is the main problem in the game. You are removing more weak spots and then expect that it's going to be the same and you can make it work any way you want to. Now, the next part he was talking about is, okay, well, why don't we move some of the tier 8s down, basically lower them down a tier. Move them down, nerf them and everything else. So that, again, he's talking about the Tiger 2 right here and everything else, so that's been buffed. Move it down to tier 6. But wait, that's already been done in the game. Now what you're looking at here is a Tiger 131 and a Tiger. So basically what they did was a Tiger, they moved it down One tier. Does it look like it has any difference between the two? Both of them are facing a KV1. Tier 5 tank. Notice that the same thing can be pinned regardless where that, even though this is the exact same tank, but this is a tier 7 and this is a tier 6. What's the main difference between the two, that what he's talking about and what I'm talking about? These have weak spots. So even a lower tier, tier 5, can actually pin the tier 6 version of it and also the tier 7 version of it. So the main problem is that the more weak spots you remove, the tougher it is for lower tiers to actually deal with the tank. Now, yes, when they face higher tiers, they're going to get their heads split open, but that's kind of the name of the game. If you're low tier, you're supposed to have a chance to be able to pin when you're 2 tiers up. Just like when you're 2 tiers up, you should be able to pin the tier 10s. Regardless of what the tier is, you should be able to, with gold rounds or even standard rounds, if you actually aim properly, to be able to hit weak spots. But if you have tanks like the VK that again has 0 weak spots, then you have the VK Marrow Breaker that has weak spots, and you know that lower tiers have 0 problems dealing with that tank. But one is basically, since it has the weak spots, it basically shoves tier 6s into the dirt. So again, I know there is a problem with +2 matchmaking, but the more pressing problem is the lack of weak spots in the tank. See, if you show an overpowered tank that with no weak spots, of course, when you're dealing with a low tier situation, it's going to look like it's busted and broken. But as you see here, you can see that this is a tier. This tank versus a KV, which is 2 tiers below it, would have 0 problems dealing with the tank. In the historic value that it has, and still be able to pin it. So people need to stop putting the blame on just +2, -2 matchmaking, because again, I grew up in this game when you had the tier spread was much higher than that, and you still were able to function and deal because they had weak spots. So what should happen is weak spots should be returned to the game so that lower tier tanks would have the possibility to pin these people reliably, even though they might have to use gold to do so frontally, or learn how to use terrain, cover, and find ways to hit tanks. Now again, part of the issue is he is correct. The way the maps are designed makes that infinitely harder. There's no doubt that way back in the day when the maps were more open, you were able to get to the side of different tanks, flank them, and hit them more easily. But that is for another video. In this video here, again, I'm saying that Chems' premise that the reason for we need +2, -2 change to +1, -1 is a false premise, because again, if tanks had more weak spots as seen here, +2 would not be a problem. This is Warp 1 saying warp out, have fun. We're gonna catch you guys on the